The night Daniel Harper opened his door to a stranger, he thought he was simply helping someone in need. He had no idea that by morning, the knock on that same door would bring a man powerful enough to destroy his life. Rain hammered against the small windows of Daniel's modest home, the kind of cold rain that made the world outside feel lonely and endless. Inside, the lights were dim, and the quiet hum of an old heater filled the room. Daniel sat at the kitchen table with a stack of unpaid bills and a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. His 5-year-old daughter, Lily, slept peacefully in the next room, clutching her stuffed rabbit like it was the most precious thing in the world. Daniel had been raising Lily alone since his wife passed away 3 years earlier. Every day was a battle, between work, fatherhood, and the quiet grief that never truly left him. Yet somehow he kept going. For Lily. That night, just as Daniel was about to turn off the lights and head to bed, a sudden knock echoed through the house. It was hesitant, weak, the kind of knock that carried fear with it. When Daniel opened the door, he saw a young woman standing in the rain. Her hair was soaked, her clothes muddy, and her eyes carried a mixture of exhaustion and quiet desperation. She looked like someone who had been running for a long time. Daniel didn't ask many questions. He simply stepped aside and let her in. But sometimes one act of kindness is enough to change everything. Before we go further, if you believe kindness still matters in this world, and that one small decision can change a life forever, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support helps keep these stories alive. The woman said her name was Emma. She spoke softly, almost cautiously, as though every word had to pass through layers of fear before it could escape her lips. Daniel offered her a towel, a warm cup of tea, and the only spare blanket he had. Emma never explained much about why she was there. She only said she had nowhere else to go. Daniel didn't push for answers. Life had taught him that sometimes people needed kindness more than questions. That night, Emma slept on the couch while Daniel stayed awake longer than usual, staring at the rain outside. Something about her story felt incomplete, but he chose to trust his instincts. After all, he knew what it felt like to be alone in the world. Morning arrived quietly. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, and Lily's laughter echoed through the hallway as she discovered their unexpected guest. Emma seemed surprised by Lily's warmth. Children had a way of breaking down walls that adults built around themselves. For the first time since she arrived, Emma smiled. They shared breakfast, simple, toast and eggs, and for a brief moment, the small house felt alive again. But peace rarely lasts long when fate has other plans. Just before noon, a sleek black car stopped outside Daniel's house, then another, and another. The quiet neighborhood suddenly filled with vehicles that looked completely out of place on that small street. Daniel watched from the window as men in dark suits stepped out, their movements precise and professional. One of them approached the door with the confidence of someone who was used to being obeyed. The knock that followed was firm, controlled, powerful. Daniel opened the door slowly. Standing there was a man who carried authority like a shadow that never left him. Tall, sharply dressed, and radiating a quiet intensity, the man's cold eyes scanned Daniel's face before drifting inside the house. Behind him stood several security guards. The man finally spoke. His voice was calm, but beneath it was a force that felt impossible to ignore. He introduced himself as Victor Langston. Even Daniel, who rarely followed business news, recognized the name. Victor Langston was one of the richest and most ruthless billionaires in the country, and he was standing on Daniel's front porch. But what Victor said next made Daniel's heart stop. "My daughter," Victor said slowly, his voice edged with restrained anger, "told me she spent the night here." Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. Emma stepped forward from behind him. For the first time since arriving, the fear in her eyes returned. Victor's gaze shifted to her instantly, and the tension between them was so strong it felt like the entire room had gone silent. Emma looked smaller standing there, yet there was a quiet strength in the way she lifted her chin. She spoke softly. "My dad wants to see you," she said to Daniel, her voice filled with apology. And just like that, Daniel realized the truth. Emma wasn't just a frightened girl from the rain, she was the daughter of a billionaire. Victor Langston's daughter. The room felt heavy with unspoken tension. Victor's eyes moved across the modest home, the worn furniture, the simple decorations, the drawings Lily had taped to the walls. He looked at Daniel again, as if trying to understand what kind of man would open his door to a stranger without asking questions. "What exactly happened last night?" Victor asked. There was suspicion in his voice, perhaps even anger. Daniel felt a quiet frustration rise inside him. He had done nothing wrong. Yet standing in front of a man like Victor Langston made him feel like he was already being judged. Still, he answered honestly. He explained how Emma had arrived in the rain, how she had looked scared and exhausted, and how he simply offered her shelter. Nothing more. Victor listened without interruption. Emma watched silently, her eyes filled with something Daniel couldn't quite identify. Guilt, perhaps, or hope. Finally, Victor turned toward his daughter. "Is that true?" he asked. Emma nodded. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Victor did something unexpected. He sighed, not the sigh of an angry man, but of a father who had spent the entire night worried. Emma explained everything, how she had argued with her father the night before, how the pressure of being the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the world had become unbearable, how she had left the mansion with no destination in mind, simply wanting to escape the expectations that surrounded her life. The rain had started miles away from home, and Daniel's house had been the first place with a light still on. Victor looked at Daniel again. This time his expression had softened slightly. "You took in a stranger," he said quietly. "That's a rare thing these days." Daniel shrugged. It was the right thing to do. Those simple words seemed to echo in the room. For someone like Victor Langston, kindness without expectation was probably something he rarely encountered. But the moment that changed everything came from the smallest voice in the room. Lily. She walked up to Victor with innocent curiosity and held out her stuffed rabbit. The billionaire froze. Lily explained, with the sincerity only a child could have, that the rabbit helped people feel less scared when they were sad. Victor stared at the toy in his hands. Then something remarkable happened. The ruthless billionaire laughed, not loudly, but genuinely. It was the kind of laugh that suggested he hadn't experienced something so simple in a very long time. The tension inside the house slowly faded. Victor returned the rabbit to Lily and thanked her with surprising gentleness. Then he turned to Daniel. "I owe you gratitude," he said. Daniel didn't know how to respond. Moments later, the long line of black cars disappeared down the street. The neighborhood returned to its quiet routine. But the story didn't end there. Weeks passed. Life returned to normal for Daniel and Lily. Bills still arrived, work was still exhausting, and the small house remained exactly the same. Yet something had shifted. One afternoon, Daniel received a phone call from Victor Langston's office. At first, Daniel assumed it was a mistake, but it wasn't. Victor asked Daniel to meet him, not as a suspect, not as someone being questioned, but as someone he wanted to know better. During that meeting, Victor admitted something surprising. That night had forced him to see his daughter's life differently. For years, he had been so focused on building an empire that he had forgotten how fragile happiness could be. Daniel, a man with almost nothing, had something Victor realized he had lost. A home filled with warmth, a daughter who adored him, and a heart that helped strangers without expecting anything in return. Victor offered Daniel a job opportunity, one that would change his life financially. But Daniel's first reaction was hesitation. He wasn't sure he belonged in a world filled with billionaires and business deals. Victor smiled slightly. "Kindness," he said, "is the rarest leadership skill I've ever seen." Daniel accepted. Not because of the money, but because he realized that sometimes life opens doors in the most unexpected ways. Emma remained part of their lives too. She visited often, sometimes just to spend time with Lily, sometimes simply to sit quietly in the small living room that had once given her shelter. And Victor Langston, the man known across the world as Ruthless, found himself visiting that house as well. Not as a billionaire, but as a father learning how to be present. Now, before this story reaches its final moment, if this journey has touched your heart in any way, please take a second to like the video, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, and subscribe for more emotional stories like this. And here's a special request for you. Before the ending, comment below, "Kindness changes destinies," because sometimes the smallest act can echo further than we ever imagine. Years later, Daniel would still remember that rainy night, the knock on the door, the frightened girl in the storm, and the moment when a simple act of compassion changed the course of several lives. He never planned to face a billionaire. He never planned to become part of a story bigger than himself. He only opened his door. And sometimes, that is all it takes to change the world. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness is never wasted. Stories like this exist because people like you believe in them. And maybe, somewhere tonight, someone will open a door for a stranger,